The headlines just keep rolling in, so we just keep on making more shows to talk about them here on Locked On Dolphins. Tyrel Dodson returning, a couple of new faces added yesterday. We got you covered here, Locked On Dolphins. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. We did a show yesterday, Surefire, dinner time, 5:30, and I hit publish, and within an hour, we had two signings, or two agreement to terms, I should say. The league calendar year opens today at 4 p.m. So at that point, all of these announced signings of agreement to terms and so on and so forth can be finalized. But one thing that can be finalized beforehand as the Dolphins can get a little bit of a jump on the news that came out this morning. The news that the Dolphins had agreed to terms to bring back linebacker Tyrel Dodson on a 2-year contract valued at $8.25 million total across those 2 seasons. This is a development for Miami that I think is a win. The Dolphins obviously claimed Tyrel Dodson off of waivers. He was cut by Seattle. Had signed a 1-year, about $4.25 million contract for a chance to start in Seattle, and Mike McDonald and that Seattle defense churned through linebackers like nobody's business. It was Jerome Baker, and then they chased Jerome Baker with a draft pick to get Ernest Jones, but they, in that same offseason, signed Tyrel Dodson. They cut Tyrel Dodson. They have a rookie who pops off for him. Dodson comes to Miami and really is a saving grace for that second linebacker spot with how disastrous David Long had played this past year. And David was cut midseason and claimed by the Lions and then cut by the Lions. And a very unceremonious fall off for David Long, which was a surprise based off how he had played his first season in Miami. But obviously a new scheme facilitated some more change. So Tyrel Dodson had a chance to test the market. Barry Jackson from the Miami Herald had a report on kind of what this process looked like between these two parties. Here's what Barry Jackson said an hour ago. After days of discussions, Miami came up just a bit to re-sign Dotson at 2 years worth up to $8 million plus. But this was a case of a player understandably wanting to test the market for a couple of days. Dotson compromised on additional money request. He liked Miami and ultimately chose to return. I do know on Monday, the Dolphins spent a good part of the day flirting with the representation of Dre Greenlaw, who ultimately signed a contract extension a new contract, will sign a new contract in Denver that was in excess of $12 million per season. Greenlaw is a dog, but Dre Greenlaw is also coming off of an Achilles tear in the Super Bowl 2 years ago and came back and played in the first half of a game and only played in 2 games, but couldn't finish either one of them. So kind of a tough situation for a Dolphins team whose objectives are getting younger, having more long-term flexibility as far as your salary cap health. I didn't just pull all of these things out of my rear end for the blueprint that we did last week, right? Like it's kind of obvious when you see what the cap situation is, the durability, the age. You need to find more ways to have more of your talent on the field and get more bang for the buck for the dollars that you're spending. Because that's really been the pitfall of the last 3 years of the Miami Dolphins, is at the wrong times of years, the players you're paying your money to and the players who are the most important players aren't on the field. So for Dre Greenlaw, if you're getting up into a spending stratosphere of $10, $11, $12 million a season, we're getting close to the age of 30. We played 35 snaps last year. Not necessarily for me. Now, it could have been for the Dolphins, and we would have talked about why they chose to do it and how it could have worked. And if Dre Greenlaw was healthy, what that could have looked like. But man, like I'm not mad about not having to say, man, if this guy can stay healthy today. Talking about a guy that was brought in for the Dolphins and Tyrel Dodson. But I know the Dolphins spent time on Monday exploring what that market was going to look like. Ultimately, them compromising with Dotson to come up on their ask versus Dotson coming down off of his original dollar amount to make this a pairing, and him getting a multi-year contract, I think, are things that are wins for Tyrel Dodson. You know, he gets a multi-year landing spot after signing somewhere and not even finishing the season on a one-year prove-it deal that was like decent starting linebacker money. It wasn't super cheap. But what I take away from this one and why I like this one so much is what I would consider to be a win is when we did the offseason blueprint last week, Dotson was a player that I had budgeted to bring back, and I had him budgeted at a $5 million annual average salary budget. Miami's coming in below that by a decent amount, by almost $1 million. So I think this is a plus value signing for Miami with a player who you have some time on task with, you have some proof of concept of what it looks like next to Jordan Brooks, and now you're facing a little bit less pressure to find a starter, because I think Tyrel Dodson can be an adequate level starter at the NFL level and can be an asset to an NFL defense. Is he a cornerstone marquee player? I don't necessarily think so, but knowing that you have this on hand, and I would assume is the case with a 2-year contract with just over $8 million in value, you probably have an out after year one that's pretty easily digestible from a salary cap perspective if you do land another starter in the draft next month. So Tyrel Dodson's back. Put that in your cap. That one came out this morning, courtesy, I believe, first was Jordan Schultz of Fox, I believe, was the first to release that news. So Miami brings back the starting linebacker that they had throughout the stretch of the second half of the season when Walker went down with the injury. And obviously Dotson made some big plays. Glad to have him back. It was one that I had budgeted for, and they came in under the budget that I had for that position and that particular signing. And they got another multi-year deal, so it's a win for him. But that wasn't the only news. As I said, I did the show yesterday. Tried to wait it out, knowing that the Dolphins are a team that you get something in the morning and then you get something after dinner. And they fast on signings throughout the course of the day. So we've been fasting the last couple of days, waiting for some news to drop all throughout the day just for 7 o'clock to roll around and like, oh yeah, late dinner, here you go. And we got it with two names, Ashtyn Davis and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. We're going to talk about those two players next, plus a pleasant surprise on the compensatory pick front. We're going to get into all that here. Locked on Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's episode of Locked on Dolphins is sponsored by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health can feel like a big investment, but it's just as important as taking care of your body. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 a session, but with BetterHelp, you could save up to 50% per session. BetterHelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable with over 30,000 therapists and over 5 million people helped. It is the world's largest online therapy platform, and you don't need major crises in your life to have therapy. Sometimes it's a matter of just having a soundboard or someone to talk to about the things that are going on in your life to make sure you are calibrated the way that you need to be. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. All right. I want to start with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, wide receiver, formerly of the Tennessee Titans, came out as an undrafted free agent for the Tennessee Titans. And he's been a productive player. He was born March 21st, 1997, so he is turning 28 years old in a week and a half. Happy proactive birthday to Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. 6'2", 210-pound wide receiver. Last year, he caught 32 passes for 497 yards at 15.5 yards per clip. 9 touchdowns. He has 19 total touchdowns receiving in 5 seasons in the NFL. Now, he came in the league in 2020 as part of that COVID-19 draft cycle where the combine happened and he wasn't invited to the combine, and then stuff got shut down immediately afterwards, like the next week. The whole world went on lockdown. So he didn't have a pro day. So, didn't have testing numbers, had to get creative with workouts to provide teams with some kind of added exposure to him. He goes undrafted. But what Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has eventually developed into, and he set career highs in touchdowns, first downs receiving, had a career high in targets. He started 9 games in each of the last 2 seasons, and in 2022 was a 13-game starter for them. Is obviously a vertical, big play type of weapon. Each of the last 4 seasons, he's played over 600 snaps on offense. This has been a prominent player. And the Dolphins landing Nick Westbrook-Ikhine at what should be considered a pretty friendly price point. Really, I mean, it's a 2-year deal for Nick Westbrook-Ikhine for $6.5 million with $3.2 million guaranteed. So pretty much the first year of this contract is guaranteed. Kind of like what I assume the Tyrel Dodson contract is going to look like, where half of it's guaranteed. It's all this year's money, and then you go from there. You're not going to get super excited about the receiving profile, but he is a player who wins in the vertical plane. He's capable of getting down the field. Has some nice double move type stuff, has good ball tracking skills, has good size, is a productive player in the red zone, is a good contested catch rate guy. These are all areas that the Dolphins with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Malik Washington and Braxton Berrios, you can go right down the list of all the prominent players that have been over the course of the last couple of seasons, the prominent receivers. River Craycraft, not a big guy. They have not had this player at wide receiver, a player of this skill set, I should say, since Devontae Parker. And look, they fleeced the Pats to trade Devontae Parker. They got 3 back. Just unreal return for Devontae Parker, who left, and the wheels immediately fell off the bus for Devontae. But Nick Westbrook's biggest value is not the vertical receiving skill set. It's not the contested catch ability. It's not the ability to win down the field. It's not the ability to win in the red zone. This is a physical boundary player for a team that wants to run the ball on the boundary. You see Nick Westbrook-Ikhine a lot in reduced splits. He's lined up in a nasty split 5 yards outside the offensive tackle. He's lined up kind of like an H-back would be, flexed off the line of scrimmage 1 by 1 off the offensive tackle's outside foot. And he's blocking. He's insert blocking in the C-gap. He's split flow blocking on the edge. He's cracking down on safeties. He's running vertically, guys, corners off the line of scrimmage, and then latching and securing downfield once you secure the edge. Maybe I'm a quintessential football dork. I know I've been called a dork and a nerd and not a math guy and this, that, the other thing, but I really am a math guy, so that does kind of make me a nerd. Wide receivers who block, I'm sorry. And Tyreek Hill's resume speaks for itself. I think Jalen Waddle is a sleeping giant from a receiving game standpoint. But you can't look at how it's worked in San Francisco with Juwan Jennings, big-bodied player. Deebo Samuel, big-bodied player. Brandon Ayuk, big-bodied player. And the consistency that those guys provide the running game for being a part of the core, or alternatively, not just latching on and securing space and mirroring, but winning real estate on the boundary. There's a guy that blocked for Derrick Henry, right? And you have the opportunity to watch a lot of the explosive runs that they've had over the years, and including this past year when the offense didn't have Derrick Henry and it wasn't good. If they're popping big runs, it's Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is usually on the front end of the play. So Titans fans love him. My expectation is he is very quickly going to become a Mac Hollins type of endeared player to this fan base. kind of like what Trent Sherfield was before Trent Sherfield left, and then had some comment offhand that probably didn't mean anything, but Dolphins fans took a certain kind of way because he signed in Buffalo and then didn't have anywhere near the receiving production that he had when he was with the Dolphins, right? Like, he's a very niche player. But at the dollar point, you're looking here at some of these. Dyami Brown got $10 million a season. Josh Palmer was the guy that I had kind of soft circled for this kind of role on the team. And Josh Palmer signed for 3 years, $12 million a season. Like crazy funny money for what you're paying wide receivers in this market. So to get Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, and the dollars tell you what kind of receiving profile this player has. But you don't need another receiving profile player. You need competent receiving profile players that bring something different to your wide receiver room from both a pass game skill set and then also from a not touching the ball contributions as a skill player in your offense. And it's what they have now. So for Josh Palmer, the wide receiver that I was trying to budget accordingly, I had that budgeted about $5 million per season. He got more than 2x that. And Josh Palmer, I don't want to get the numbers wrong here, but I'll pull him up. Say what you will about Josh Palmer. He hasn't had more than 584 receiving yards in either of the last 2 seasons. He's got as many career touchdowns as what Nick Westbrook-Ikhine had last year. And I'm not saying that they're very obviously different stylistic players, but if you're signing a player at wide receiver with an intention of being a prominent part of your offense from a pass game and touching the football perspective, apparently the going rate for players that are getting 40 catches a year for 500 yards and a couple of touchdowns is $12 million. Versus Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, you got for a quarter of that for a player whose expectation is make some big catches down the field for us, be a contested catch rate type guy, but more importantly, win without the football. Win without the football for our other playmakers to win. Now, Ashtyn Davis being the other one, signing in Miami. He was drafted 68th overall in the 2020 draft. He was out of Cal. Productive college player at Cal. Was drafted by the Jets. He spent his first 5 seasons in the NFL with the New York Jets. He has 8 career interceptions, but only has 22 career starts in 5 seasons. This is really only his first 2 seasons in the league. He had 16 starts. He's had 6 starts in the 3 seasons since. And it's not like the Jets have had the cup flowing over with safety talent. You looked at the safety room this year, and I thought it was one of the weaker spots on the team. And Ashtyn Davis, has not played a lot of football through that. He's played 261 snaps last year, 217 the year before that. As a point of reference, he played in over 1,100 snaps his first 2 seasons in the league. So this is a more modest deal. It's a 1-year deal as reported, around $2.5 million. We'll need to see where the economics check in on this one. Chance to be a special teams guy. I would not be surprised if he's competing with Elijah Campbell. Because where he hasn't taken defensive snaps, he's taken over 800 special team snaps in the last 3 seasons. I'll do the math. It's over 900 special team snaps in the last 3 seasons for Ashtyn Davis, highlighted by 396 in 2023. So you have $2.5 million investment on a 1-year deal for this one. You have Elijah Campbell's back on a $1.9 million 1-year contract. You obviously have Patrick McMorris a part of this mix. They signed Ifitu Melifonwu. I still think you're missing the top dog out of this group. But Melifonwu, Ashtyn Davis has experience being a third safety. Elijah Campbell has some experience being a third safety. You can kind of let those guys compete it out. You obviously have Patrick McMorris as a young guy. I think you have good competition, but I think you need a name now to tie the safety room together, whether that's a rookie or whether that's a free agent signing or some vets that are still out there. But my expectations are tempered for Ashtyn Davis relative to, I think Nick Westbrook-Ikhine can be a really valuable role player addition to the offensive side of the ball. Now, we did get a surprise yesterday. We're going to get into that next here. Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even who is going to cut down the nets at the end of the road. Whether you have your eye on a few underdogs or otherwise you're leaning into the favorites, FanDuel makes it easy to back them all with spreads, totals, and game props. You could stay in the action for the entirety of the tournament as games are happening almost every day. So there's always something exciting to bet on. And the FanDuel app is simple to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. So there is no waiting around, sitting on your hands, waiting for your funds. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on all of the college hoops action all tournament long. This came out a little more than 12 hours ago, but it came out with a surprise for Miami. It was the NFL's formal ruling and jurisdiction on the compensatory pick formula. So remember, we did a whole thing last year with compensatory picks and what the objective was behind it and how the mechanics of being awarded picks worked and net gains and losses in free agency relative to the value of the contract of the players that you lost versus the players you retain. It's a whole thing. We did a whole show. We did probably a whole 2 weeks shows, if we're being honest. And a lot of you guys were getting a little sick and tired of it. But the NFL handed out the picks from last year's offseason. And these are now in hand. You can now trade these if you want to. That didn't used to be the case. But if you wanted to trade your compensatory picks, now you have the fluidity to be able to do that, which is important for Miami because they did not have a third-round pick based off of last year's move in the draft to get a fourth-round pick for Jalen Wright. They traded that pick away. But now they were awarded the number 98 overall pick in the draft, courtesy of the Robert Hunt departure. That is official, 98th overall pick. They did get the first pick in the fourth-round compensatory window for Christian Wilkins because he did not reach his playtime qualifiers. Had he played 3% more snaps this season, the Dolphins would have had 98-99. What are you going to do? That's so Dolphins, right? As so many like to say, that is so Dolphins. Dolphins losing Christian Wilkins on a $27 million a year contract for a guy who was a snap hog for 5 seasons. And first year he leaves, he gets hurt and doesn't meet the playing time threshold. So 98-135. That was expected. The Dolphins were also projected to get a little bit of run in the 7th round. They were projected to get one for Deshaun Elliott. They did. That one comes in at 253 in the 7th round. They got a 4th one. This was not a scheduled occurrence for the Dolphins. This was out of left field, and largely because the player who qualified for it, apparently, according to Nick Corte, who does the calculations on the outside of the league to he reverse engineered the compensatory pick formula. The player who qualified was Cedric Wilson with the Saints. So all of those injuries to Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave, they add up to enough opportunity for Cedric Wilson at a dollar amount that was big enough that qualified the Dolphins for an additional 7th round draft selection. That leaves the Dolphins with 11 total draft picks. And from a compensatory pick, they got 4, which is as many as you can get. They're maxed out. You literally could not have got more if you wanted to for more net gains or losses. So that's a win for Miami. Where does that leave Miami from a draft capital standpoint in totality? According to Tankathon.com, here is the 11 picks the Dolphins have at their disposal. 13, 48, 98, the comp 3 comes in at 98. So 3 top 100 picks. They then have 4 more picks in the next 55. They go 116, which is their 4th round pick. 135, the comp pick for Christian Wilkins. 150, their own 5th round pick. And then they have 155 from Denver, which was a part of the Bradley Chubb trade at the trade deadline a couple years ago. So that's 7 picks in the top 155. And then they have 4 7th-round picks, 224 from Chicago. That was the Dan Feeney trade, I believe. 231, their own 7th-round pick. And then the 2 comp 7s at 253 and 256. 256 is the next to last pick in the draft. So, you can roll your eyes at 224, 231, 253, 256. At the very least, maybe it's some ammunition for you to jump up and get another player if he's there in the 6th round and he slides. If I had it my way, you'd find 2 more. And ideally, you'd find 2 more between 50 and 116 in that range. Now, how you get there, I'll take all the picks I can get. That seems to be the big influx opportunity for the Dolphins this offseason. But for every opportunity that there is to add cost-controlled talent that is young, it's probably going to be hungry because they had to sit around and wait all day, I'll take 256 as an unexpected assignment from the league. It's a win for me. It's an extra draft pick. We're draft guys, right? We're draft guys and girls on this program. We love the draft. So that's where we stand currently. What else will we get? Well, I strategically decided to record one late morning so that the rest of our midday fast of news and acquisitions gets a little bit of a break. You guys can get caught up. I can do some draft type stuff, working on some prospects, and we can reconvene this evening if we get anything throughout the course of the rest of the day. Perhaps defensive line is next on their list. That's going to do it for us here today. Locked on Dolphins, this episode of the show. Hope to see you all again very soon. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in right here, Locked on Dolphins. I'll see you later.